Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Tellion Riegl, and I'm a member of the class of 1986, and I want to welcome you all here today. I'm joining you from the Philadelphia area, so for me it's afternoon, but I know for many of you it's the morning. I'm very appreciative to Michelle, who organized this group, Michelle Mayans from the class of 1989. She's also the organizer of our unofficial Facebook page. She reached out to me earlier in the week to ask if I would help her to moderate today's discussion, and it's a true honor for me to be here with all of you today and to help in any way that I can. I graduated in 1986. I moved to the East Coast to go to college, and I have stayed here ever since. So while I haven't spent much time at all in Los Angeles since then or on campus, I still hold my Immaculate Heart education and all that I learned there very near and dear, and I'm grateful. One of the silver linings of COVID has been the ability to connect with many people virtually, and it's wonderful to be with all of you here today. We've got 77 people here. Michelle tells me this is the biggest brunch we've had. So thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, do you want to say anything before we get started?
Yeah, I also wanted to acknowledge Meg as the co-founder of the page, Meg Yamato from class of 91. And I just quickly want to say why the page started, and it kind of ties into why we're here today. I was at my reunion 2 years ago, and I felt so much love from not just my classmates, but from the entire, like all the classes that were there. And I was so inspired by every woman that went up to speak. And ever since I was a freshman, I had volunteered to the reunion. Because I love to hear the stories. And so I always wanted to create a platform where we could be interconnected, because there's so much to share. And I think that's a way to preserve our history as well. So this is like a dream come true to have you guys here, as well as our incredible guests that Nicole introduced. So anyways, I just want to say thank you. Grab your mimosa, grab your coffee, and we're here every Sunday at 10:30 to just chat about anything. So thank you again. Take it over.
All right, thank you. So just a few housekeeping items before I introduce our esteemed guests. First off, we are recording this presentation, just so you can actually probably see it in the upper left-hand corner. The goal is we're probably going to hear from a lot of wonderful people, so we want to document that. And I believe Michelle said we're even going to share this with the Immaculate Heart Archive. So this is something that's very important. Secondly, if it's possible for you to update the name that's showing underneath your image, you can go to show your name, including your maiden name if your name has changed, along with your class year. And you do that by hovering over your image in the upper right-hand corner. You see a little box next to the mute sign that has 3 dots. If you click on that box, there's an opportunity that says rename. It's the 3rd one down. And if you click on that, you should be able to type in and adjust your name. And if you can't, it's not the end of the world, but it just makes it a little bit easier for us to identify you.
It's just nice also to include your class, because that way our guests, Ruth Ann and Kathy, can take note of what year you guys were there.
Exactly. Let's see. Today's conversation will last about 90 minutes, just so we can manage expectations there. And we want to hear from all of you. So we will ask you to utilize the chat feature in Zoom, which many of you have been doing, which is awesome to see. So if you have a question, please type in the chat room, just type question. Or if you have a story you want to tell, type in the chat room story. And what we'll do is try and call on as many as you throughout the presentation, so we can hear from you as well. Can I see some nods of people, if that makes sense to people? Okay, thank you. Awesome, thank you. All right, and as of now, everybody is on mute except for a few of us. So if you are called on to speak, you'll need to unmute yourself, which you do by clicking the little blue box up in your image, or on the lower, probably left-hand side of your screen, assuming you see something there. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our esteemed guests, Ruth Ann Murray and Kathy Desmond. And I'm going to read some short bios on the 2 of them and then turn it over to them to talk. So I'm going to start with Ruth Ann. And Ruth Ann, it is a pleasure to see you. I haven't seen you in 35 years in person, so this is the closest I got. The last time I saw you was at my graduation in 1986. So it's wonderful to see you. Ruth Ann Murray entered the community in 1946. She took her vows in 1948, graduating from the Immaculate Heart College with a master's in science and theology. She became the first teacher at Immaculate Heart High School and eventually served as she first became a teacher at Immaculate Heart High School and eventually served as principal until 1996. And then she became the president of Immaculate Heart until 2008. She ultimately became a trustee emeriti for the high school. I know many of you know Ruth Ann. Many of you may not know Kathy Desmond. I had the pleasure of talking to Kathy yesterday, and I'm very excited to hear more from her. So I'm going to share a little bit more about Kathy. So Kathy graduated from Immaculate Heart High School in 1958 and entered the Immaculate Heart community that same year. She received her BA and teaching credential from Immaculate Heart College in 1969. During that time, she had the opportunity to do 2 summer Fulbrights during college at Georgetown and Northwestern. During the 1960s, she taught middle school and high school, including 2 years from 1968 to 1970 at Immaculate Heart High School. She joined the Immaculate Heart community and remained a member for over a decade, despite not living much in the Los Angeles area. In 1970, she moved to Washington, D.C., to focus on social justice and to explore other worlds, including joining the Peace Corps and spending a few years in Brazil. After the Peace Corps, she returned back to the DC area where she obtained a master's from American University. She continued to work in DC with many different organizations. And in 2001, she met George, a recent widower who became the love of her life, and they married in 2004. They welcomed each other's families, friends, and traveled the world together. Sadly, George passed away in 2008. Kathy keeps active, volunteering with her parish's Haiti ministry, including traveling to Haiti, tutoring middle school students, and she also keeps happy and somewhat up to date through her 4 granddaughters who are aged 14 to 21. She's remained close to the greater Immaculate Heart community and her many lifelong friends. So without further ado, I'm going to pose a question to Kathy. And I'd ask you, Kathy, because hopefully most of you have seen Rebel Hearts, the movie, but for those of you who don't, I think it would be helpful if you could just spend a few minutes setting the stage for everybody, what was happening in the 60s and how we kind of got to where we are to be together today.
Thank you, Nicole. I saw Rebel Hearts, and I thought it was an excellent film. It got our story right. It's a good summary of what happened, and of course, a documentary of 100 minutes can't tell everything. What I like best about the film is that the creators unearthed these videos and tapes of my heroes, women who taught me in high school and who remained my friends. You can see why we looked up to and liked these women. My only criticism is mild and relates in a way to the title, perhaps the impression that viewers might get. We did not start out as rebels or feminists. We started out doing what the church wanted us to do. We had a vocation. This story made us rebel against authority when it was wrong, and we became feminists because of our experience opposing oppression by an institution that was out of touch with our lives. So setting the stage, it's 1958. I graduated from Immaculate Heart High School after 12 years of education by Immaculate Heart Sisters. We were aware of poverty and injustice in Los Angeles and beyond. We expected to go to college. That year, 1958, a new pope was elected. John the 23rd soon shocked everybody by announcing a meeting of bishops, the first in 100 years, to address the church in the modern world. The focus would be aggiornamento, excuse my Italian, updating, renewal. After 4 years of intense preparation, the Second Vatican Council began in late 1962. Unfortunately, Pope John the 23rd died in 63, but the council continued and ended in December of 65. the body of bishops approved 16 documents that pointed the way forward for the Catholic Church. Immaculate Heart sister, a sociologist and friend of mine, Ruth Wallace, attended as an observer. In between the 4 sessions, there was excitement about reading the signs of the times. The college attracted leading theologians and bishops to meet with the community. One of the documents was addressed to the renewal of religious life. We took that seriously. I was a young nun working hard, teaching, and I participated on the committee that looked at the future works of the community. We based our discussions on the decrees of the Vatican Council, particularly the church in the modern world. I can still remember the words. The joys and hopes, the anxieties of everyone, especially the poor and afflicted, are the joys and hopes of the church. So we were aiming to do what the church asked us to do, and we were hopeful and excited about the future of the church. So I think that's sort of a background that might be helpful.
Thank you, Kathy. That was very helpful. The context is good. When in talking to you yesterday, that was one of my big takeaways, was that you were all doing what the church had asked you to do, the church in Rome had asked you to do, and that was an interesting connection for me to make. So I was doing some research and I found a Time magazine article from February of 1970 that quotes our very own Ruth Ann Murray. She's described as a high school religion teacher, and Ruth Ann says, "Our decision is a most viable way of rallying our potential as educated American women in the service of the church." And that resonated a lot to me. We're all here because we got our education at Immaculate Heart, and Kathy and Ruth Ann were doing what they needed to do to ensure that women could continue to get education and also be service to the church. So without further ado, Ruth Ann, I would love for you to share your thoughts on how you felt about watching the movie, and then Kathy will turn it over to you to ask the same question or answer the same question.
You're on mute.
Thanks everyone for your patience as we maneuver some technical problems.
Go to the left corner, Ruth, at the bottom. It says there's a little microphone. You see the little microphone at the bottom left?
And
below one of the squares of, you'll see a person, and then you'll see mute.
You should have access in the participant list to unmute her.
Oh, really?
And she's unmuted, but her video's off. Now she's good.
all right. Oh, I see her. There she is.
You got it?
We're
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great, great, great. Okay, thank you. Well, just to say that I did like the film, and I liked it especially because these were people that I knew and respected and loved. And to see Carita again, on film, to see Anita Caspary at her very best, to see Pat Reef, to see Helen Kelly. Most of these people I'd been in the novitiate with, so I knew them, when they first entered the convent. Dorothy Dunn, another one. And it was such a pleasure to see them and to see them, articulate so well what their position was and what our position was. I mean, these were college people primarily, and they lived they didn't live up the hill, but they worked up the hill, and we were down the hill, in the high school. But the high school faculty and the college faculty were together, and we thought the same way they thought. And we We loved the fact that the college was bringing in Parisi from the council, so that we were getting firsthand understanding of what was going on at the council. And I think, you know, we really went with that and thought that we were doing exactly the right thing by taking up the challenge to modernize, to become women of the modern world. And that's what we wanted our students to love the church, but to become women of the modern world. Uh, and I think, you know, it'll be interesting because I think a lot of this conversation today will pick up where Kathy left off. You know, where we were informed about it. We took 2 years to prepare for the decisions that we made, and I'm sure that's going to be part of the conversation today.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. Kathy, would you like to add anything to that?
I mean, just to second what Ruth said about the power, to me, it was emotional to see the people. I had kept in touch with many of these people, and to see them when they were young and enthusiastic. And for many of us, it was a very traumatic event. I mean, it was extremely traumatic to go through. I often said it was the most traumatic event of my life up to that point, and including many years afterwards. And you know, just like some people you'll see in the movie, Corita didn't want to talk about when they asked her why she wanted to move. It made me think about the stories you hear about World War II soldiers, that they didn't want to talk about what they saw because it was disillusioning. So it was emotional. So now 50 years back, you get a little more perspective on things, and it still was emotional, good, and with the seeing the courage and the wisdom of the leadership of our community. And at the same time, realizing that somehow, while we survived and went on to do good things, there's still a lot to be done. But I also like, just as a child of Hollywood, I just liked some of the film techniques. I wondered how they ever got all those quotes. And then I listened to the explanation afterwards that someone, Schwana, went around and had like 50 hours of interviews of some of the people who, this was 10 years ago. So fantastic that they got that on tape. Anyway, I'll let other people talk.
Ruth Ann, did you want to add to that?
No, except Kathy's right. You know, it was an incredibly emotional time. And I know that, you know, I thought that the high school faculty got together and we determined that no way were we going to involve the kids in this dispute. This was between us and the cardinal. It became us and the church a little bit later, but us and the cardinal. And we did not want the students, you know, to be all involved in all of this. But the bottom line was they knew more than we ever thought they knew. You know, when I was talking to Maureen Shannon Diekman, the president of the high school, and I raised this with her, and she said, Ruth, we talked about it every night at the dinner table. The newspapers had words on it all the time. You know, they would talk to a priest and the priest would give them the whole story. So it was anything but something that we could contain, you know, and that's okay, except that we did not want to turn the kids off from the church or from, you know, celebrating their religious tradition. I mean, we wanted to keep this to ourselves, but it did not happen. I can tell you the kids knew just about everything.
And this is well before the age of social media, right? So that's a different
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
right, just we think news travels fast now, but even then news was traveling fast, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate you here. I appreciate you saying that. speaking of that, is there anything that wasn't in the film that you wish had been talked about? Is there a message you want to capture that wasn't in the film? One of the things I'll see it a little bit. One of the things that Michelle and I noticed is that there wasn't a lot of conversation about the high school. It was much more focused on the college.
Yeah, right.
The way the leadership was set up, that made sense, but that was my takeaway. I wonder, Ruth Ann and Kathy, what your thoughts are on that. What might have been missing, and recognizing it was only 100 minutes. I mean, there's lots to tell.
Well, only to say, well, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I was just going to say we were the young warriors behind them, supporting them. There was no daylight between us and the college. Speaking for myself, I thought, yeah, they go for it. They had, we were supportive and present and in background on subcommittees. I don't know, Ruth, what do you think?
Well, all of us participated in that 2-year preparation that we went through to come up with what we called the decrees, which was a statement of our beliefs. But to answer the question, did the film go as far as we wanted it to go, or as far as I wanted it to go, or was there some issue? I don't think there was an issue of leaving out the high school, because as Kathy said, we were right with the college faculty on that. If anything, I think the film, the broader picture that this fits into is women in the church.
Right.
That's the broad picture right now, that this was very much a part of. And that issue is very current, and it's very important. And there's a lot to say about that. Women in the church today. I mean, I've just spent about 3 months going through the history of the church, and I'm finding it terribly fascinating and revealing. And it affects me right now. That's why the film, I think, introduced us to that, but there's much more to say about women in the church today.
Thank you. Speaking of that, the New Yorker ran an article just last week specifically about that. The topic was this movie, but they talk a little bit more about that, which I'll share a link to that in the chat. I just read that this morning. So that's some more, more kind of current information on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Michelle, do we have anybody who would like to ask a question or tell a story?
So Laurel Hungerford, do you want to ask your question, or should we read it from the chat?
You can go ahead.
Basically, it's a question that Nicole and I had as well. What did it feel like, Ruth and Kathy, when you had to sign the paper? What was that emotion?
Go ahead, Kathy. I think we'll say the same thing.
Okay. It wasn't hard for me. The decision had been, basically, the changes had been coming since 1958. This is now 1970. We saw where things were going. There were threats. And so my thought was, you know what? This is a legal document saying that I agree to this. So my decision was what to say that, I was forced to this decision. It wasn't my free decision. So I signed the paper, and then underneath it, thinking, oh, I can't wait to think what the canon lawyers in Rome think about it, if they even read it. I choose by this signature, to some effect, I didn't keep a copy, to go along with the legitimate authority of my community that's going along with the Vatican Council. I was not given a choice in this decision, blah, blah, blah. But I signed it. And I was concerned about the due process at that point.
And Ruth?
Well, I remember I think the first line was, I freely approve, or I freely give my signature. And I crossed out freely, and I crossed out a lot of other words, I think, in the document. But signed it, and I was certainly willing to sign it.
Wow. Does anybody out there that was at the school, a student at that time, want to tell a story about what it was like being a student during the, 68, 69, 70, 71, when things were happening? No. Does anybody
Can I
raise?
say something?
Yeah.
I'm Cheryl Ortega. I was a college student at the time.
Okay.
It was like there were almost daily bulletins of what was happening, unofficial. but we were certainly following, we were certainly supportive. And one thing that we noticed all the time was whenever there was some kind of an event at the college, I remember that there was an outdoor mass one day for it wasn't Mary's Day, it was just an outdoor mass. And the very next day, a letter came from the chancellor's office saying that you can't have outdoor masses. So we, it was like every single thing that happened the next day, something came from the archdiocese that let us know that they were watching. So somehow news was coming out of the college to the archdiocese, like telling on them, and we were angry about that, and we were so supportive of the move that was going forward, and we felt bad that it was somehow being sabotaged.
Anybody else have a story to share? We know you have so many stories.
Hi there.
This is Herminia.
Kathy Malloy from class of 71. First want to do a shout out for both ladies here, because they were so formative in my growing up. And I was remembering a couple of things, but yes, absolutely. There was the social media going on every single day where we knew things, we'd overhear things. And I remember particularly Sister Marcia, as she was then, we were at St. Anthony's, and it was the Spirit Award. That was a big thing. And it was patently obvious that we had 80 times as many kids there as anybody else. But yet, after you folks, signed the documents and everything, somehow we didn't win the Spirit Award. And Sister Marcia said very quietly to somebody else, I can stand it when they do things to us, but when they do things to the kids, it makes me crazy. And I just thought that you folks were being so good and so careful about that. But I didn't really realize the depth of it until I went on a Europe trip with Sister Margaret Fay, and her sister Mary came along too, and Sister Miriam, I believe was her name, and she came along, all the chaperones. And at that point, there's a different kind of a feel when you're traveling with people and all that, and really beginning to understand what it was all about, what it meant for them. And I remember them saying in particular about what it was like for them to be young women, and what life was like for most young women, say in their 20s, 20, 21, 22. You're growing, you're changing and everything, and how they were taken to Montecito, and yeah, you had classes, but you played a lot of softball, you played a lot of basketball, and what she felt the infantilizing, that went on, and the squashing of things, and just understanding at that point how sensible it was to say that times have changed, and to make people act like high school kids when they were in their young 20s, and plus the whole business of the justice component of having 83 kids in your class. Now, I was used to 68 kids in my class, 50 kids in my class, but 83, my goodness. So all of those things, when we heard about it, talked about it, were things that mostly we knew and all very, very powerful for us.
That's great. We have another question to Ruth and Kathy. What was it like the first day you went back to Immaculate Heart with lay clothes on?
Well, I remember Maureen, I was talking to Maureen Shannon about this, and she said, you know, when I went to the school as a freshman, every teacher was in habit. Yeah, you know, there were a couple exceptions, but the teachers were in habit. She said, when I graduated, they were all out of habit. You know, and she said it was a lot of fun. So I said, you know, Margaret Fay has red hair. I mean, you know, I mean, it must have been kind of interesting and fun for the kids. And it was, I don't quite remember how traumatic, it wasn't traumatic for me at all. I mean, we had, you know, before, you know, privately, maybe gone out, you know, in secular dress other places, but I mean, after, you know, when you go into a classroom and you're teaching, you don't really think about what you're wearing. And I think after the first day, the kids got it and forgot about it.
Kathy, did you want to respond?
I always thought the whole debate about clothing was ridiculous. I thought once you explain to people that your clothes are trying to symbolize what the change in the church and the world is, I thought once you said that once, you didn't need to be bugged about it. And I was busy. I mean, I had the last thing on my, you know, I'm going to St. Anthony's, or when I was going to Immaculate Heart in 1968, I was trying to close up a school, had 45 years history of social studies department, trying to get those things in order for the next people coming in, getting a whole new school that I knew, classes prepared, not a whole lot of time. The last thing on my list to worry about was clothes. And I was one of the people who said, years later, that there's advantages to uniforms because it's one less thing to do in the morning. But in terms of the actual changing of clothes, my group in 1960, 8 years before, was in the novitiate, and they were starting to change about clothes because they were just impractical. It was impractical, the stiff coifs. So we had been going through one ridiculous change after another, and because I could sew, I was in the middle of sewing things for people. And but basically then and now I said, you know, on the list of things to worry about, this is 100, on the list of 100 most important things to worry about, this is 101.
Right.
Well, and for the students that were there at the time, what was it like for you guys to see them for the first time?
What do you mean?
I have the best story in the world from the college. We were having an academic assembly. The entire faculty came in wearing caps and gowns, including the nuns. Helen Kelly was up on the stage to give a speech. And before the speech, she unzipped her academic gown, and she was wearing a bright pink suit underneath. And the entire student body gave her a standing applause that probably lasted for 5 minutes. It was like a remarkable, like, approval. Yes, you're great. That was an amazing day.
Wow.
I do remember on the first day, we had a blackboard or something at the top of the stairs with announcements, I think, when you came up. And somebody had written on there, "The nuns kicked the habit." And also, I was working at a department store. I mean, it was a little bit traumatic for some of us, I think. We just didn't know. It was just awkward, you know, because I remember one teacher, and I don't know who it was, asking, "Is this skirt too short?" You know, it's like, you know. And then Sister Bertalicia came into a department store I was working at, and I was supposed to help her find clothes. So it was awkward at first.
And you know, in fairness, I was saying, this is going to cause a ruckus. Why don't we prepare people ahead of time? Why don't we send out a letter to the parents ahead of time? And that was, Ruth, correct me if I was wrong, it was either the principal, Kathleen Lucid, or the diocese. We could not, we were told we couldn't do anything to prepare people because we knew, I mean, we knew it was going to cause us, you know, people were going to do more than just raise their eyebrows. But we could not, during that summer, we were told we could not write a letter to the parents, or, you know, the things that you normally would do as a good manager. Ruth, do you remember who it was that said we couldn't do that?
No, in fact, I don't remember that. I do remember that, you know, most of us didn't have any money.
Right.
And that Kathleen, I think her parents gave her some kind of a gift of money. And I know she divided it up into $50 bills and gave $50 bills to most of us so we could go out and buy something. But I don't remember anything that saying that we couldn't talk about it or
Okay.
write to people.
I-
We lose.
I talked to Ann Carabino last night. She very much wanted to be here, and asked if there was anything that she might want to share. She's the sister of social service, and she remembered there being a big assembly where the sisters got up and talked about, and I don't know if it was before the habit was different or not, but talked about the importance of integrity, and that vows were something that was much bigger than a habit. And she like remembered every word of it. So she ought to go be in an archive. So for what that's worth, there was an assembly for the students anyway.
Thank you for sharing. Good.
Does anyone else have a comment or a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Am I on? I don't know.
Yes. Yep.
Where do I go?
No, you're fine. I can see you. And
Okay. So I had a really unique, and the movie brought this out to me. I am also from the class of 71, and I was coming as one of two non-Catholics in my class to Immaculate Heart, and I met my first nun in 1969. So there I was, with Dorothy Joan, thick glasses, full habit, the whole bit. I was raised Episcopalian, Catholic light, and there I was, you know, however many months later that it changed, and we ended up seeing all these lay, you know, clothes and whatnot. So I must say that my perspective was not having that conversation all the time at the dinner table about the nuns, and just feeling like I was having this amazing high school experience with amazing teachers and amazing community sense, and all these women with a very strong instillment of women can do anything that they put their minds to. And it made me realize my perspective is different, and yet look at what Immaculate Heart gave me. So kudos to you. I look back on it now. I thank my mother for sending me there. And I can only imagine that she was looking at the newspaper and seeing what a dynamic group of women these women were, and wanting me to have that experience coming from the public schools. And it is remarkable to me when I think about it, how much you did insulate all of us from what was happening during that time, and that we really were focused on our schoolwork, and we really were focused on being students. And Kathy, I remember your class so well. Oh my goodness, you taught me how to take notes. You really did. You taught me how to listen and to create my outlines and to take in information in an organized way, and all the while teaching history. It was really remarkable. You had 2 years only at Immaculate Heart. I feel so blessed to have had you. Ruth, I didn't get to have you as a teacher, darn it, but boy,
You're
did we have fun elsewhere. So thank you. Thank you both.
RG, really well said. I graduated 15 years after you. You could have said exactly what I was feeling. I feel like my experience at Immaculate Heart was so unique. It's been 35 years, and all the people I talked to about their high school experience, I don't feel like anybody ever had an experience like I did at Immaculate Heart, like we did at Immaculate Heart. I don't know if other people feel that way, but I just think it's so unique. And my question to Ruth Ann and to Kathy is, do you think we would have felt that way if perhaps Cardinal McIntyre had been more forward-looking, if he'd actually followed the spirit of Vatican II and been more forward-looking, and those who didn't leave the church or did not leave the church didn't? The house has one. Sorry,
All right, we had to mute somebody.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to say leave the church. Had you not had to dispense from your vows, do you think we'd all still be feeling that? Is that just the spirit of Immaculate Heart? What if the world had turned out differently? If that time in the 1960s hadn't occurred, or maybe it occurred in a different way? What do you think? Would we all still feel this strongly about our alma mater? Ruth Ann or Kathy, would you like to take that question?
Well, just one comment I think that probably should be made is that we had schools in other dioceses, and we didn't have that kind of problem in other dioceses. The bishops went right along with it. They understood, I think, what was behind the idea at Vatican II, and they had no problem with us. And we had no problem in other dioceses. We had incredible problems in our own. And I think that really reflected a lot on the Cardinal's own attitude toward Vatican II, which I felt was never very supportive. I think he just didn't like what was going on at Vatican II, and Vatican II said, that they were the council that was going to bring the church into the modern world, and so I think a lot of it had to do with being in Los Angeles under that Archbishop Cardinal.
Yep.
I wanted to just chime up. I'm Tati from the class of 1971. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think my whole experience at Immaculate Heart coincided with the movement of women, empowerment, independence, trying to gain the rights that I think so many squandered in the years following. But I always looked at my time in Immaculate High School as a compliment to the battle that was going on beyond the bubble of the high school, and felt it was unfortunately a very old-fashioned hierarchy in the Catholic Church that, as other men were trying to do, to hold women back. And unfortunately, our wonderful Immaculate Heart nuns were caught in that cycle of domination by old white men. And to this day, we still see the problem of old white men being dominant in so much of our governance throughout the United States. But in any case, it empowered me. I raised 2 girls with my husband, and it has subsequently empowered them to be free thinkers and to to basically fight for what is right. And I don't believe that it was just the Immaculate Heart nuns that do that. I think they were also a sign of the modernization and of the times. And they were carrying the spirit of Vatican II. And they were others were trying to squelch our attempts.
I would like to chime in too, if you don't mind. I was educated by the Immaculate Heart Sisters from first grade to the second year of IHC college. And I was at the college from 65 to 67. I did not return to the year 67, 68 because I was so disgusted with Cardinal McIntyre's oppression of the Immaculate Heart Order and what they were trying to do with us and in education and so on. But you asked the question, if Cardinal McIntyre hadn't done that, would we have kept the values that were taught by the IHMs? I left Immaculate Heart and was not really associated with it after that. But throughout my professional life and my own life, I carried with me the values and ideas and integrity and interest in equality that I learned with the nuns. I taught and was an administrator in LAUSD in another school, and always worked with English learners and brought art and music and novelty in teaching instructions and clear planning and everything that I valued from my education. So Cardinal McIntyre didn't take away what the Immaculate Heart nuns gave me, but he interrupted my relationship with them. And but it didn't change the values that I expressed in my teaching in life.
Well said. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I add to that? I'd like to add to that because I think I too had the Immaculate Heart nuns from first to fourth grade. And then the change happened when they left the parochial schools. And I unfortunately didn't have educated women. I ended up having some nuns who were extremely conservative. And as a result, I really withdrew and stepped away from the church in the way you can when you're 5th through 8th grade. And when I went to Immaculate Heart High School, and I was the third of 3 sisters who went there, it was a wonderful experience. I was coming back home. And one of the lessons I learned from having an early, the Immaculate Heart community teaching me versus another religious order was really the emphasis of tolerance, the emphasis of diversity, the emphasis of inclusion. And those were things that have taken me and really propelled me through my life. And as I watched Rebel Hearts, I really felt a coming home and a sense of how much we are missing at large. As a result of losing sight of a great sense of community. And I think with COVID and the political and the social unrest, it really is sad to see that as much as we have gained, we still have so much more to go. And I only know that it's lit for me, my rebel heart, to go even further. And how can I make a difference? And so I just think, we need to know our history. And I say thank you enough to the community for helping me be a confident woman and to seek ways to giving back. So I just say I've been blessed in my life by having this wonderful community in my life. So thank you.
Teresa,
can I say something?
But Teresa Myers is next.
Oh, thank you. I raised my hand. I wanted to ask Ruth and Kathy, and this actually really segues from Nanette's comment about the nuns leaving the parochial schools. Because I had actually a few years ago listened to some of the oral histories of the IH community, which were online. And I didn't think the film, not only did they not capture, they really didn't address what the emotional toll was like, both on the nuns leaving, because they had long-standing relationships with schools all over Los Angeles. My sisters, had been educated since nursery school. Immaculate Heart nuns. And I think it was emotional for the women leaving the convents, not only because of the housing issue, but they had ties to those communities. And then conversely, I believe the families had huge ties to the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart. And Kathy and Ruth, could you possibly address that? And is there anything else, because I'm making that presumption, but is there anything else the film did not address that you thought was an important part of the story?
Kathy, you should probably respond because you were in a school that had to close. I think you were at St. Anthony's.
Let me unmute myself. It was extremely traumatic. It was traumatic on many, many levels. First of all, we had been at that school and in that community for 45 years, I think.
The school celebrated its 100th birthday this year.
Right. And so it was a traumatic period in society. I remember I went and shook Robert Kennedy's hand 2 days before he was assassinated. And I was department chairman of sociology. And there were all these kids, and the Monsignor was spouting Cardinal McIntyre's things in the pulpit. And people were saying, "Why are you leaving us?" And we were busy, and I was also going to go drive to study. I had gotten a Fulbright for teachers to study back east, and I had to leave in a week. And I just remember sleeping on, and I was one of the 3 drivers. I slept until we got to Las Vegas. I was so exhausted when we got in the car to drive across the country. It was extremely traumatic for us as a teacher, because we thought we're leaving people in the lurch. At that point, there was no decision as to who was going to come. There was nothing I could turn over any information to. I don't know if one of the girls that I taught that was at Queen of Angels, who I was talking to, Herminia Cabillas. Herminia, are you?
I'm here. I'm here.
Why don't you say, Herminia, what you were telling me about the impact on the families that you knew?
Well, I was taught by the Immaculate Heart nuns since first grade at Queen of Angels. It was a poor inner city school that was created to serve that population that was mostly Hispanics. I was there to the first year of the high school. And one of the things I discussed with Kathy, and I still get emotional about it because I was 14 at the time when this was going on. We were the only school that was closed by the diocese. And it was awful. It just destroyed the girls, it destroyed families. I mean, what people don't understand was that the sisters were the safety net of many people in that community. The majority of the people, the families, were from the projects. They were from public housing. They were from mothers that were the head of household. They were, they needed so many things. And the sisters really, I witnessed that a lot of the sisters really made sure that the families were intact. And at that time, I also shared with Kathy that, that was the time when the East LA schools broke out in walkouts. There was a lot of social upheaval going on at the time. And for the cardinal to close this one school, I mentioned to her, and nobody talks about this, that when the sisters left and the
Cardinal brought in these other nuns, there were 2 suicides. A 12-year-old boy with a family. One of the women went to Immaculate Heart with me, and another girl that overdosed. And nobody, it had more, there was a lot more harm than that was in the community that was spoken about. And I remember going to the funeral when this young boy, I went to the funeral and his parents were there, and the diocese sent their heavyweights to kind of calm the community down, to calm the parents down. They were afraid of a lawsuit. And the nuns were removed immediately after that. So there was a lot of consequences after that. And I don't know what happened to the other schools, but I know for that community, it took a long time to repair it. And I was very angry and I remember Ruth Ann and I had a run-in at one point when I went to Immaculate Heart, because I was so angry, not at the sisters, but I was angry at the church. I left the church then. As I told Kathy Desmond, it was my first time experiencing institutional racism. And I couldn't believe it. My mother was a good Catholic. You know, we would go to Mass, we would do everything we needed to do as Catholics. But to experience that, I left the church. I to this day, I mean, I go to church and things, but I don't trust them. I don't trust the priest. And then years later, Roger Mahoney sends all his pedophiles to Tucson. I live in Tucson. You know, it's just over and over again. And the Immaculate Heart sisters were the only ones that let me keep my faith. I'm big into social justice. I do a lot of work in Tucson. But my faith in the church is gone. It's gone. And but thank you, women from Immaculate Heart. People can't believe I'm still friends with Kathy Desmond, with Jody Martin. I was really close with Judy Lickman, I think was her name.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people tell me, how are you still close to them? I go, well, they were kids when I went to school. I mean, we weren't that far of age. And Kathy, tell me, after all these years, we're still good friends. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And I love you all. And it's true what everybody says. Immaculate Heart helped me be the woman that I am in my society right now. But I will not forgive the institutional church because they haven't learned. So
Well said.
that's what happened.
Gigi, you're next.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Gigi?
I have a problem with the sound on my computer. First of all, hi, Kathy.
Hi, Gigi.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you.
And I see Ruth quite frequently. But no, I really would. I'm so glad that the issue of Cardinal McIntyre came up, because we were in high school prior to some of these changes. But to see the bullying and to now understand what these men of power, the fact that he put the sisters in the church to teach and not pay them anything practically. It was almost like he had this group of slaves, and I use the word loosely. But to think that the sisters who were trying to do exactly what they were supposed to be doing with Vatican II and open the window and let the new world come in, and to know that these women were working so hard and so conscientious about doing the right thing, and to have this one man stand in the way and go, no, he was afraid. He was afraid of the sisters because they were strong. They were such good, wonderful women. And so it just, ooh, watching the film, which I did enjoy the film very much. I enjoyed the technical aspects of it too and how they put it together. But it made my blood boil to see some of the things with Cardinal McIntyre. And I remember he was the one who gave me my confirmation, and he really bopped us hard when he had us join the church officially. He really whacked us all in Beverly Hills. Good Shepherd Parish is where I was, but no, it was really outrageous what happened, and the fact that these women have stayed so strong, and there's so many wonderful members of the community that I know well, and my classmates of 62 years ago, and I still get together. We correspond. We try to have a Christmas party every year, and we've done that for over 60 years. And it's something that I am the most grateful in my life is what I learned and what I have become as a result of Immaculate Heart. My little panda is sitting on the stairs watching this, and it's really my proudest accomplishment is to know and love these women.
And that's an interesting point, Gigi, because you're class of 58, and that was before the rebellion and everything happened. So there was still that kinship, that sisterhood that was so strong, even before anything happened. So it's a good point. I'm glad.
I'm sorry, I was shocked a little bit about the spy. And it was mentioned that there was one of the nuns who was a spy, a bad apple. And they said, I was wondering, I wanted to ask Ruth, I don't know if it's appropriate, but was that when they said Sister Eileen, was that Sister Rose Eileen?
No.
When I was? Kathy, was it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Wait, let me unmute myself. No, it was not Sister Rose Eileen was wonderful. She was a support of all of it. It was Sister Eileen. I forget her last name, but I don't have. My mother said, "Don't say anything if you can't say anything good about her." I can't say anything about her.
But the thing was that at least, you did understand how some of the information did leak back.
Oh yes.
But I'm so glad to know it wasn't Sister Rose Eileen.
No. She was wonderful.
Up and emptying the garbage when we were there, and she was just, phenomenal. So I'm so glad to know it was somebody I don't.
No, she was one of my heroes too. I loved her.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. You want to take it away, Nicole? Next, with their hands.
I was going to turn it over. I know Maureen. Maureen has been waiting to ask a question. So, Maureen, are you there?
Okay. If not, how about Cheryl or Teague? I know you've been wanting to.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a story. I also had the Immaculate Heart Sisters from first grade all the way through college, and elementary school was the Mother of Good Counsel. And when they were closing the school down in 68, friends that still had younger children that were there told me that the pastor called all the parents to a meeting to explain what was going to be happening the coming year, and explained that they had had a discussion about whether the school could stay open or not, and that if it did, the tuition would be quadrupled. And so the parents at that meeting were to vote, actually, to decide whether they would pay that increased tuition to keep the school open. And they did. And when I heard the story, I thought, now, Mother of Good Counsel was not a poor community. It was a fairly affluent community, and so they could do that. And I wondered about all the other schools that the I.A. James had all around the diocese, whose communities would not have been able to do that. And I wonder if that kind of phenomenon led to the increasing of the enrollment in Catholic schools in general, because tuition is the primary reason why kids don't go. So I guess fortunate that at Good Counsel they were able to stay open. They had an entire lay staff the next year, except of course for the principal who had to be a nun. She was a different order, but you couldn't have a Catholic school that didn't have a nun principal. So, and the pastor explained that. Anyway, just sharing that story, that I imagine that the disparity in economic levels around the diocese would have directed schools actually were able to maintain or not.
Thank you. Tiffany Henry, 89. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, I'm happy and how wonderful my heart feels to see all these people from class of 51, because over the years, Anita York has been the one providing historical perspective on these issues as a student, and she's passed away. So it just really does my heart good to see so many people from the class of 71 speaking here today. Also, when Ruth said that one of the principal desires was to protect the children, so that their experience wouldn't be tainted. I had to give some side eye, because I've talked with people, and I've really talked with students who were coming into Immaculate Heart High School at the time, and it's just amazing to me how foolish some of the adults acted towards the children. Okay, so that's one thing. And then the last thing is that, and we've talked about this when we Friday lunches. I'm so glad to hear from the former Immaculate Heart member who lived in Los Angeles and then came to live on the East Coast. So my question to you is, we've talked about that movie, The Keepers, a little bit. We've touched on that. Have you seen that movie? That documentary, excuse me?
That
No.
question.
Kat? No, I haven't.
Or has Kathy, the lady who went to Georgetown and American University, has she heard of that documentary, The Keepers?
Kathy, that's for you.
I'm racking my brain. I haven't seen it. If you tell me what it's about, maybe I've heard about it. Which one?
Okay, so it's basically about the diocese in Baltimore, and how the priest raped and killed a nun and another Catholic church member. And he was basically allowed to go unchecked because he was a priest. He had a brother who was part of the Baltimore Police Department. It's called The Keepers. You really need to see it. It's on Netflix if you get a chance, because I looked at that movie and I said, okay, because I live on the East Coast too. I live in southeastern Virginia. Okay, so I looked at that documentary, and of course, I'm a graduate of Immaculate Heart High School, and I'm thinking, this is just a hot mess. We these nuns who are trying to do the right thing socially, and then you got this basically a hell on earth here on the East Coast, and it's basically like a support group going on, because the so many molested so many high school girls. It's called The Keepers.
I'll take a look. I'll take a look at it if it's on Netflix.
Thank you, Tiffany. I did post a link to the Keepers, at least the Wikipedia site, in the chat if people want to take a look. Thank you very much, Tiffany, for your feedback.
Nicole, I have a comment.
Sure.
So my name's Kathy. I started at Immaculate Heart in 1981 as a freshman, and that was the year that there was no uniform. The following year is when uniform became mandatory again. And in our early 80s days, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about all of this story. I went there knowing that these were the nuns who, according to what I knew, my very limited knowledge of the story was they got kicked out of the archdiocese and now they don't wear habits and now we don't have to wear uniforms in that school anymore. So that was why I wanted to go there.
God.
I loved being there. I loved the education. I loved all my teachers and it was great. But I want to know a little bit about the perspective that Ruth Ann has, being that that was just a decade later, because at the time I didn't realize it was only a decade. You know, at that age, you think that was like eons ago.
Yep.
And I realize now watching the film that it really was just a very short period of time in between when all of that really had happened. And what was your perspective, Ruth Ann and Kathy, at that time in the early 80s? What was your feeling being that far apart, or that from that time period in your life then? Was it you just wanted to move on and you didn't feel like the kids at that time needed to know the whole story because we're moving forward? Or was it still you felt like you needed to still protect the kids and keep them a little sheltered from that trauma of that time?
Kathy, well said. I had the exact same question, and I was wondering that. And my other follow up to that, and no pun intended, but I wondered if this group of women had been rebellious, then did they not want to encourage rebellion in teenagers? Because that's not the time you want rebellious teenagers, right? So I would love to hear that perspective. And I appreciated talking to Kathy Desmond yesterday, understanding that maybe it was still a little too raw. Just like as she said, people who fight in wars don't always want to talk about it. So I welcome conversation, or welcome Kathy and Ruth Ann's thoughts on that.
Well, you're talking. I became principal in '73, and I know that one of the issues that I faced was the fact that Kathleen really did feel that if the nuns could be out of habit, the kids can be out of uniform. And I disagreed with Kathleen on that. And when I became principal, I put the uniforms back, partly because when this became an issue with Kathleen, she had just sent out some kind of a questionnaire, and something like 99% of the parents that responded about the uniform said they wanted a uniform, and Kathleen felt that it wasn't in keeping with the plan of the school at that time, and she had good reasons, I'm sure, but I tended to disagree, and so when I came in, I did put back the uniform, but with so many options, you can have shorts, you can have pants, you can have this, you can have that, you can have this, but they were all of one uniform. My feeling on that is we had students in the school that were very, very rich, and we had other students that were very poor. And one of the things that the uniform did was knock out any kind of discrimination that would have happened with with not having a uniform. And we saw that. I mean, you could tell, you can say, well, we have a uniform plan, or not a uniform, but a plan, you know, that kids have to follow. But within that plan, with the number of options that the kids had, you could tell the difference. And I didn't want that difference to be evident.
Right. That's the rationale where even some of the public schools back here had uniforms in and out. I, and the other part of your question is, did you not want to talk about it? I was never part of not wanting to talk about it when people asked me questions. And when I was teaching religion, I was sure that I taught from this book that I still have, which was the documents of the Vatican Council, which included, you know, maybe some of you who were there in 70 or 71 was in one of the religion classes where we talked about this, where, you know, I still think this is a very important document that should be taught in religion in the school. And this is the context within which the change in the church. And I guess the other thing that was most disillusioning to me was not the ongoing battle with the cardinal, which, you know, this is something that went on for 10 years before the final shoe dropped. My disillusionment was that when it came to go to the authority in Rome, that they backed up the cardinal. When all the other religious orders of women in the United States were writing support for us, when all the other bishops in California were saying, come teach in our school, we don't care what you wear, you know, that I was shocked and disillusioned that Rome backed up the cardinal. And it wasn't that I didn't want to talk about it with anybody. It was that I just got tired of people saying, reducing it to the discussion about what we wore, you know, and I tried to say, I don't care. I don't care. You know, that's beside the point. And the point is that there was a mission for the church to update itself. We were not unique among religious orders in the United States that were studying this and trying to figure out what it meant for how we live. And like someone pointed out that this was also going on in the wider society. What should women be doing? That it seemed to me that it wasn't that, it was unique and it wasn't unique. And that it's still resonating. That some of the issues about women in the church is still going on. The Catholic Church that I belong to and am happy with is a historically Black parish. It began as a Black parish. It's now very multicultural. It's a social justice Catholic parish. And I'm okay there. Other Catholic churches, I'm not okay.
Right,
know?
that's right.
So I don't know if that answers, whoever answered the question. Nicole, you said it was your question also.
Kathy, Kathy Wong, was that answer? Sorry, I'm looking at Kathy, but I don't know if she can see me. I think you did a great job answering, so we'll move on.
Yeah, it answered a lot of the questions about the uniform. I think you actually covered a lot of answers in your previous discussions, questions and answers. But I guess what I wanted to know, maybe more at the high school, Ruth Ann, how did you feel about, you know, being at the high school in the 80s, 1981 to 85 was when I was there. Was this still on your mind, or was this just something in the past that you've moved on from and you're just moving forward?
Well, it became something in the past, yes. It didn't keep my, I certainly was involved and consistently concerned, and still am, about the relationship of women in the church. As I mentioned before, I think this was the beginnings. You know, it was small. Maybe people didn't have a lot of empathy toward this. But by the 80s, I mean, I had such an agenda, you know, to get the school back on its feet again, that I wasn't terribly concerned about the past. We lost it's important to know, you know, that that when all of this happened, I think it was in probably 1971 or two, that Kathleen was called into the office with Anita, and overnight, Anita told her, "You take that school and become independent. You become a 501c3 independent school, complete with trustees, totally independent of the community." And I know now that she did that because in canon law, if a religious community goes out of existence, the local bishop can take over all of its assets. Yeah. By making us an independent corporation, if the cardinal ever attempted to take over the property, the community could give it to the high school right away, and the cardinal couldn't touch it. So that's one of the, you know, and so here we were and we had no money. The community put up its land to give us the collateral we needed to get the loan to build the media building. We had to replace classrooms. We had to replace, you know, we had to clean up the place. We lost the convent. We had no, you know, nuns weren't living there anymore. So I didn't think back a whole lot about the past. I was really concerned about the future.
Can I say something about what Sister Ruth Ann just said? Sister Ruth, there's a lot of other sister communities that are going through that.
Yeah, they are.
Where they're trying to take their property and they're trying to take what they have. And I was told that by another sister out of San Antonio. And so it's just awful what they're trying to do to the women. They just feel they can take control. But anyway, yeah, I remember that.
Can I ask a quick question about that? Because I thought that was just such a brilliant move by the women of IHM. And this is Nanette Delatory, class of 76, sorry. And one of the questions I had is, was there like a trust of women at the community who were helping guide these decisions? Or did you have some outside legal help, whether it was through church law counsel or civil counsel to help you guide through this? Because it's not mentioned at all during the meeting. And if you did not have any, if there wasn't any outside counsel,
we had very good counsel. Okay. There were canon lawyers, you know, that were very close to us, and we could consult with them all of the time.
Great.
I mean, and they were very sympathetic to us. You know, they weren't running the church either, but or the cardinal. You know, I mean that. They couldn't interfere with that, but we had very good relationships with canon lawyers and with major people from Vatican II. I can remember being in the class teaching in the classroom right across from the dining room, you know, where the people come out the dining room and they go into the main building. And I was teaching my class. It was a marriage class. And and I looked across the way, and here was Father Bernard Herring, who was probably the leading moral theologian of the world and one of the leading periti of Vatican II. Here he was coming out with Anita Caspary. And I said to my kids, that's one of the major men in Vatican II. So when they came by my door, I ran to the door, opened it up. I had a class from Bernard Herring up in USF, so I knew who he was and knew what he taught, and I asked him in. And he came, he came in, and I said, would you just say a few words to my class? And I can't remember everything he said. He was only there about a minute, but I know the first 3 words were, love the church.
Wow. Can I ask a follow-up question to this? And that is, Vatican II really stressed the experimentation. And so whenever there's an experimentation, an experiment needs to be concluded. And as it indicated in the movie, you look at the data. Was there any time during this 10-year period of experimentation, were you did you ever think it was going to result in permanent change in the fact that these experiments would be accepted? Or did you kind of feel that at any point in time, Vatican could take it away? Because, it's religion powered by men, not by women. Even though if it weren't for women, we wouldn't have a church.
Well,
sorry.
I can't see whether I'm the one who's talking right now.
You're speaking, Kathy. Go for it.
Okay. In terms of the decrees written by the community in 1966 and 1967, each one of them covered a different period of life. And in each area, it boiled down to, for instance, I was in the future works of the community. I was interested in that we would do our ministry other than just in Catholic institutions, that we could work in other institutions. So it was in a prayer and in what you wore and in governance. So those sisters who wanted to have still a superior, they could. Those of us who say, look, we're a group of adult women, let's make our decisions in common, and everywhere in between, the same on prayer, the same on clothes. No one was forced to not wear the habit. And, so those decisions were going to be wrapped up, as somebody mentioned that, normally when you have an experiment, then you wrap it up. But by 1970, it was water under the bridge.
So I just want to say we do have a waiting list of people that want to ask questions. So I'm going to call on Michelle Constantine.
Hi, good morning. I'm from the class of 2001, and I noticed there are a few others that are sort of my era, Alessandra, and I saw Holly and Vanessa. And I wonder also, maybe they want to add to this. I see Alessandra also has her hand up, but as a student in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was not fully aware of this entire story. There were like little bits that I think I caught every now and then, and I don't know that the school at that time was really diving into this history. I know Christine Knudsen talked in the chat about how now there's some of this is part of a women's studies class. So, I have independently dove into some of this research as an artist and as somebody who has admired Karita Kent for so long. But I thought, having not been fully aware of this history, that the spirit and strength of the women who ran the community of Immaculate Heart and their resilience really permeated the spirit of the school. And I think even not understanding the full history of this all, it was really there. And I think I really felt that. And I think it really helped make me who I am, the way that I question things, I don't know, being a feminist without even realizing that I'm a feminist, and maybe in similar ways that I think either somebody earlier said, we weren't trying to be feminists. It just sort of happened that way. And I think also at the time I was a student, a number of the faculty at the high school had gone to the college. And so they had studied with people like Karita, and they had been there when Anita was in charge of the college. And I don't know if this is still part of the high school, but it would be so sad if this legacy and all of this history was not being passed down. And so I don't know, I just wanted to acknowledge that, like, even when I was a student, 15 years after most of you were, I still felt that community and that legacy, and I just hope that it continues. Thank you. Thank you for all of you.
I'd love to comment on that. I can assure you that the spirit that I think was there in the 70s is still there. We're very blessed, I think, to have Maureen Shannon as president. We have Naima, who graduated from this school, is principal of the high school. Gina Modino is principal of the middle school. And they are, and the people in the religion that are teaching the religious department and the religion department are well aware of what happened. I've been invited to speak to both faculties more than once. Other people have come in that have shared the history of the school. And I can absolutely assure you that the major religious traditions like Welcome Day and Mary's Day and all of those great graduation at the bowl, all of those great wonderful traditions are still there. The blessing of, they just finished having the blessing of the rings and going through giving each, having each kid drive in. They had a mass in the chapel. It was zoomed out to kids. Then they had the blessing of the rings. Maureen, I know, gave a beautiful talk on the meaning of the ring. Then they all drove in and they got the ring. And it's hard right now to preserve those things, to have people together the way you want it to be. But the school is going overboard to maintain those great, wonderful traditions that you love.
Thank you.
Ruth, I think that's wonderful. I was an art teacher at the high school for just 1 year, and I think my experience really kind of tarnished my memories and history of the school, because the administration fought me on so many things that I thought were like integral to the spirit of the school. And it just, I think I still struggle with that, because I felt like there were all these things that I remembered from high school in the spirit of it all and the creativity of Mary's Day that I felt like were being lost. So that's why I said, like, I hope that this is all continuing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alessandra, you're next.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I'm from the class of 07. I'm also the current sophomore counselor at Immaculate Heart. And I was so overjoyed just watching the documentary. And I learned about this history taking Maria Palia's Justice and Peace class my senior year. And I was just amazed. I didn't know I knew I was part of a sisterhood, but I had no idea the legacy that I was a part of, and it made me so proud. And I was already happy to be at Immaculate Heart, but this just made my pride just overflow. And I wish that I would have gotten that as a freshman. And one thing, when I returned, we kind of revamped the freshman orientation. And so Miss Palia and I and myself, we collaborated on a presentation that we gave to the freshmen every orientation called IH Her Story. And we included this. And, I was able to access someone's archives on Flickr, and they had all kinds of old photos of the Immaculate Heart community and Mary's Day. And so that's the presentation I worked off of. We didn't have this orientation this year because of distance learning, but I know that that's a part of what we want to do with the freshmen. And I even heard talks of possibly, once Rebel Hearts is out for streaming, widely available, we'd love to make it viewing for all of our students. And yeah, That's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh no, I have a question. Sorry, I didn't even ask my question. Oh my gosh. My question was, I was just curious as to why the college closed and not the high school. One thing that I wished was kind of included more in the documentary was how the legacy of what happened like still lives on, yes, in the community, but in my opinion also in the high school. And I feel like it just kind of got overlooked a little bit. So I'm just curious if anyone has an answer to that as to why the college closed down and not the high school. Was there a decision between closing one and not the other, or just purely finance?
You want to take that?
Ruth probably knows more than I do,
Well,
but
only to say that the trustees of the college made the decision to close the college, and
two different entities.
And yeah, it's a totally different entity than the high school, and both institutions suffered from propaganda, from the stuff that was coming out, about we were renegade nuns, we were leaving the church. There were a lot of terrible things being said about us and our relationship with the church. And the college was a small college. It was always going to have trouble financially. And I think this just broke the back of the college, but not the high school. See, the high school was large enough to maintain itself. And then we started the middle school. And the middle school really helped to sustain the high school. And I might say about the middle school, when we left the elementary schools around the high school, those parishes lost good teachers. We were good teachers. And when I was principal, the first year, I think, or second year, I started the middle school because our parents were coming in and telling us, start a middle school because our kids are not getting the education they should be getting in the grammar schools, where they had the poor pastors and had to bring in people. They had to fill in whole faculties. I don't know how the pastors really handled it. That was a terrible blow to them. But the bottom line was they lost good teachers, and we had parents coming in saying start the middle school, and we did.
I have a question for Ruth Ann. If you know, why did the college decide not to move in with the Claremont colleges?
Well, that was Helen Kelly was president of the college then. Yeah, they had the big move. That was
Yes,
the big thing.
Yes.
And to tell you the truth, I'm not quite sure why that didn't happen. But what I heard was that the faculty didn't want it.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure of that at all. I don't know.
Okay. I also heard it was the economics just weren't there.
Yeah, it could be too.
And from my perspective of working with the Catholic Bishops' Conference for 7 years in Washington, D.C., the Catholic, certain parts of the country are more progressive than others. And the Diocese of Los Angeles, the money people who traditionally supported Catholic things were very conservative. And so you didn't have, I think there are many internal reasons that I'm not privy to, but it was clear that the college was not going to make it. So moving wasn't going to support that. Even though some people passionately wanted to do it, the numbers weren't there. That's what I heard. Again, I wasn't part of that.
Interesting. I'm Maureen. Do you have a question?
Thank you. It's Maureen Martino. I'm from class of 73. My sister, Michelle Martino, was class of 1972. And I just want to go back to a while ago, people were saying experiences we had. And I remember it still stays out in my mind. And first of all, I want to thank Ruth Ann and everybody for the true grit that they showed, because it clearly made the most significant impact on my life and how I have evolved as a woman. But I remember one day, Eileen Brown and I were in home economics class with Sister Marianne Pettit, and who no longer was a sister, but she was part of the community. And she said to Eileen and I, "Would you girls mind driving me to my wedding?" And Eileen and I just were like so honored and like, we'd love to. And it just was watching the transition of somebody who went from being a nun and then transitioning into the community and then establishing her life as a married woman. And I will always remember that. I know it's a silly, maybe remembrance is one of many, but it's a vignette of a time period of my life. And I loved it. I absolutely loved every moment about it.
Thank you. Pat Skehan? We can't hear you.
Can you
keep forgetting about that unmute thing? Yeah, I'm glad that you called on me toward the end here. I wanted to address the question of how Rebel Hearts might be used as part of the education and educational component. And that is one of the original commitments of Shawnee Isaac Smith, who was the one who recorded over many years those different women that you that taught you, those great women. All right, so yes, when I met Shawnee in 2002, she'd already been on this project for 2 years. So, and Laureen DeRocco was her PA through all this. Okay. Anyway, the point is that she wanted you all to know that Rebel Hearts as an educational component at the high school and then beyond was one of the original commitments, and there is some work being done right now in discussion of that. Also, to let you know that all of those hours upon hours of interviews, of which you only saw a teeny tiny bit, are being donated to the Immaculate Heart community when all this is done, and hopefully there will be a bridge between that archive and use in the high school. I would hope that that would be possible, because probably depends on it.
Yeah,
on agree. Pardon?
Me too.
Yes, right. Oh, it's all about agreements, isn't it, Ruth Ann? I mean, who signs on the dotted line for all that?
Right.
But that was the goal, and there will be some educational component that will be promoted at some level by this whole project. And I just can't wait to talk with Maureen Diekman about it. I'm very excited about that part. So that's a reassurance to whoever was asking that question. All right, thank you very much.
Jan?
Hi, everyone. I'm another 1971 member. There's a lot of us here today. I think our class might have been more affected than any because it was our first 2 semesters there when all this really happened. And I just want to say to Ruth Ann and Kathy, I think you did an amazing job of keeping it out of the classroom and out of our lives, really, because yes, there was a certain amount of information. We knew a little bit of what was going on, and we were grilled at the dinner table when we went home every night. But I never felt in class that it was impacting how we were learning or that it was distracting from the lessons in any way. And I also felt that the community teaching us the kinds of progressive, caring, compassionate, all the things that we treasure from Immaculate Heart was a much bigger message than either what was going on in your lives or Catholicism, for that matter. I never felt like it was shoved down my throat. I was not a very strong Catholic, and I haven't been one for a long time, but I've never felt that I lost any of the other things I got from Immaculate Heart because of that. As opposed to my 8th grade experience, which Ellen and Teresa will be able to relate to, where we had, I don't know what order she was from, a nun who was completely a dragon, where you didn't have a choice, you were just told how to act. You brought us to be what was best in each of us. And I never felt like outside opinion or, you know, the turmoil in the church or anything affected us. You really did protect us, I think. I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't feel that way. But I felt like the whole 4 years I was there, I was in a wonderful bubble that prepared me to then go out at UCLA, you know, when I started teaching myself at university, to address community and progressive issues that I wanted to take up, but only because I didn't have to fight them when I was in my teens with you, you know? So I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to thank you for that. I was supposed to go to Providence originally. And it was only because my parents thought they might move back into the middle of town that they told me I wasn't going to Providence. And my dad said, well, then you'll go to Marlboro. And I was so horrified by this. And my mother, of course, said, no, she has to go to a Catholic school. My dad wasn't Catholic. Then I ended up at Immaculate Heart, which ended up, in the end, horrifying my mother and pleasing my dad, who thought you were all absolutely in the right mode. So anyway, a little personal story. Thank you.
That's awesome. Teresa Myers?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Teresa.
You're still on mute.
Okay. I wanted to thank Jan for saying that and to agree with her that even though we obviously knew what was going on, I did feel very protected from, I'll rephrase this. A few years ago, I read Anita Caspery's book, Witness to Integrity, and I was astounded by what was going on during my education. And I think that underscores the fact that they really tried. Obviously, we could read the headlines, etc. But if I had a clue that the cardinal had come in and said, "You will suffer for this," which to me is one of the most painful and extraordinary lines that someone could say to another human being. And I actually don't think is emphasized enough in the film. You will suffer for this. And yet we came out of that school with a very joyful, positive, deeply enriching experience. So I'm going to ditto Jan and thank everybody for that.
Thank you, Teresa. Well said. Meg, I believe you had something to say?
Yeah, I had like 3 things, but one is I remember one of my first memories at Immaculate Heart. One of my big memories, first big memory was in '86. And at the time, Archbishop Mahoney came to the campus and did a big mass. But I remember among quite a few of the faculty, it was a much bigger deal than some of the other faculty members. And I remember it being, I remember that feeling of there's something bigger going on here than what they're telling us. And now knowing the history a lot more, I feel like, oh, okay, I get it now, perhaps. You know, after so many years of pushback from the archdiocese, now we have an archbishop coming. And that was, I thought, kind of interesting at that point. The second thing I wanted to mention was apparently, so many years ago, I was volunteering at a hospital that was run by the Sisters of Mercy. And one of the patients that I went to visit, she was considerably older, in her 80s, 90s, and she noticed my class ring. And she asked if I was a Catholic school grad, and I said yes. And she asked what school, and she just kind of looked at me, and she asked, did I know the history of what happened? And I said, I know some of the history. And she asked specifically if I understood the history with the sisters, and I said yes. You know, that the sisters had basically had to make a gut-wrenching decision of whether to stay with the church or whether to leave and form their own lay community. And she just looked at me and she said, do you understand that just about every order of sisters outside of your community basically was looking intently at the Order of Immaculate Heart of Mary? That every woman, every sister, every nun was intently looking at this because they knew that this had repercussions for everyone, and there were far more people supporting the sisters than they were allowed to voice. And I thought that was really huge. And she looked at me and she said, they changed how we were seen. And I was kind of impressed. And she said, never forget that is the legacy that you were taught from. So I've always taken that to heart. The third point I wanted to make was when my wife and I were dating, my wife is a product of very strict Roman Catholic schools as well, but very, very conservative. And when she was in elementary school, she had been warned about the activist rebel nuns out west. And I looked at my wife at the time and I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but you're dating basically one of the products of those activist nuns. So that I find is hilarious, is the fact that very conservative priests were basically warning their young students, their young charges about
the rebel nuns.
Yes, the activist nuns. And but she definitely she loves the feeling of community and the way that what our roots are, where we come from, is very, very devoted and committed to uplifting women. And I cannot say enough about how we have, I think, all benefited from that legacy. So.
I have something to say. Also, I was really impressed when the first transgender graduated from Immaculate Heart. I thought that was really incredible, and the support that happened with the students embracing. I forgot. I think it was his name Elliot, or
yeah, it was Elliot.
Yeah.
I was faculty the year. I think either the year he graduated or the year before he graduated. And I think it was the year he graduated. And that year, at the beginning of the school year, they had an education session for faculty about transgendered rights and all of that, to sort of like help the faculty learn and grow more, which I was totally shocked by as new faculty coming in who had taught at a really liberal arts college for so long, that the high school was like so forward thinking. It was magical.
Yeah, amazing. But he entered as a girl, right? He entered.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask or say, comment? Yeah, Teresa, you're on mute.
Yeah, just in terms of sharing the stories, and I only share this one for the sake of the archive in a way, because it's kind of redundant to the experiences in some ways. But earlier, Cheryl from the college had talked about how the Archdiocesan had intervened on having Mass outdoors. And we had a tradition at the high school. I don't know how long it lasted, but we had Mass every Sunday in the auditorium. And we were very fortunate because the kind of people Ruth referred to, these eminent theologians who would be teaching at the college, would indeed then that Sunday be the celebrants at the Mass or give the sermon. And this Mass had complete with a band of the women like Jan playing guitars and maracas. And it was a very festive, very, well, I don't want to say cerebral, but it was just a terrific combination of celebration and theology. It started to draw a huge crowd from Los Angeles. My family went up every Sunday, but families from all over Los Angeles attended the Mass until one day the celebrant had to read a letter from the Archdiocesan saying we were no longer allowed to have this Mass. Right. And that was for me as a senior at the high school, it was like a dagger to my heart. It's just, and I can't talk about it anymore. But for the archive, they did everything they possibly could to stifle us.
You know, for the sake of the archive, I just want to say this. It's totally not about Rebel Hearts, but it's about the young lady, the panda that died in a car accident in the 79, I believe. And Carmen Hill would tell the story every year about how she loved Jackson Browne, and Immaculate Heart did a Mass for her. And all of a sudden this guy comes in jeans and a leather jacket. And Ruth Ann, he talks to you and you didn't know who he was. And then, but that was her favorite musician. And I think what was important for that story that totally stayed with me all my life is that it wasn't about Jackson Browne. I mean, yes, it was awesome that he came, but it was about the sisterhood, that the girls somehow found his house and like sent paper planes with the event that had happened, that he had met her at a restaurant. And this is when the memorial would be, the day and time, and he shows up. Like, do you remember that story, Ruth Ann, when he came?
I remember it very, very well. Part of that was that apparently they were not going to allow her. The kids wanted to be with the coffin overnight in the church, and the pastor there said no. So I said, you bring the coffin into the high school, and where the kids could be there when they want to be. And somebody, you're right, somebody found the guitarist Jackson Browne, and I met him at the door, and he had his guitar, and I said, come sit with me and I'll tell you when to go up and play. But that was the students. The students were the ones that pulled that off. And it was so important for them to be there, to be with that young kid that died, that was their friend. It was a very moving moment. And I was so glad I could do that for the students.
Yeah. Yeah. Supposedly a few weeks before she died, they saw Jackson Browne at Lucy's El Adobe. And she went up to him and said, hi, I'm just want you to know I'm your biggest fan on the planet. And so when they sent these like paper planes and made these flyers, they had said, we met you at Lucy's El Adobe, and this is what she said. And killed in a car accident on her way to Mammoth. And anyways, that story it's just so beautiful because it really speaks to Immaculate Heart and the love that we have for our sisterhood.
It was such an important thing for the students. The students wanted to be with her all night. And the pastor wouldn't allow that. And I thought that's crazy. Let her come to the high school.
Wow.
Well said.
Can you hear me? Anyone?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Wonderful. Finally, my audio is working, and I apologize for the interruption a while ago. Testing 1, 2, 3. But I'm delighted to be able to speak just a couple of words. As you can see, my name's Kathy Chambers. Magnell's my married name, class of 1969. Ruth Ann, you know what you mean to our class. You're an honorary member of the class of 1969. And you know that to be true. And Kathy Desmond, I've known your family for a very, very long time. And it's just like being at home with you two. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Our class of 1969 arrived at the doorsteps of Immaculate Heart in 1965. We were there through the whole time. And I have to echo someone's message about not feeling as high school students the pain and the challenge and the fear that you and your colleagues, Ruth Ann and Kathy, had to have been feeling during those years. You protected us, you encouraged us, you ensured that our confidence as women, as we walked out that door, remained intact. And we, to this day, remain proud to be a Panda. We thank you. We'll never, ever forget what you did and what you meant to this group that you see before you and so many hundreds of other women. The legacy and the footprint that you've had on this school is beyond words. And I hope you know that. So on behalf of all my crazy 1969 alums, I don't think there's anybody else from 69 here. I've been looking, but every single one of those ladies would say, we love you and we thank you and we can't wait to see you again and give you hugs again.
Right.
Thank you all, and to Michelle and Nicole and everybody else who's had a lot to do with putting this together. It's meant a lot.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Doesn't anybody want to? Yes.
I would just like to say that this has been really wonderful and has brought back all kinds of emotions and memories that are so meaningful to me. And after I retired is when I realized how much the values of the IHMs permeated my career. But I'm thinking of Corita right now and the sadness that she was so individually targeted during that time, but that her art expressed her resiliency and creativity and joy so clearly anyway, that she's such a beautiful exemplary person in this whole scene, that she so fully expressed herself in spite of it all. So I'm thinking of her now too.
To remember her. Yes, yes, yes. I agree with everything you said. Corita her art was very, very significant and still is. It kind of picked up, what the prophet Micah said, do justice. And her photographs were about justice and about raising people's consciousness and helping people to be better people. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Anybody else want to say anything as we close?
I would love to.
Oh, Stephanie, sure.
Thanks. There have been so many wonderful memories shared, and I just want to repeat my appreciation, Ruth Ann and Kathy. I was a graduate of the nursery school at Immaculate Heart College, a graduate. I think it was 1969. I was probably 4 when I went there, and can still just feel the art that we made and were exposed to. And I graduated from the high school in 1983 and had come from St. Brendan's School and was taught religion by nuns and priests. And it was so rote, and it was just memorizing things. And I remember just having my mind blown, going to Immaculate Heart and feeling respected enough to be taught, like, classes that applied to our lives, like marriage and death and dying and morals. And I'd never considered those connections, the context of religion in my life. It had just been such a turnoff to be taught by these, sorry, but these women were not happy, and it was not cool. And then to go to Immaculate Heart and feel so valued. I really, really appreciate the struggle that you guys went through to maintain your sisterhood and and then to pass it on to us. Thank you so much from me and my sisters, Catherine and Elizabeth Bottom, and for everybody here. Thank you so much.
So I guess we can, say goodbye by singing the alma mater. What do you guys say?
Sweet.
Together. Should we sing the alma mater? Can we all recall the words? Okay. So
I just pasted it into the chat.
It's probably going to sound like Happy Birthday, where it's totally out of. But that'll be good for the archives as well. So we should all unmute ourselves, right? I'm going to wait for everybody to unmute.
Can you unmute everyone?
Well, I can't. I don't have that power. Oh, yeah. No, I don't.
You do, as a host.
Well,
Sound funny.
One of my co-hosts, I'm so technologically freaked out. Okay, so everybody's unmuted, right? Okay. I know we have more people that are well, we can do it. We can start. So on the count of 3.
You start.
Okay, ready? Our special guests ready? Ruth Ann and Kathy, you guys ready for the alma mater?
Sure.
Okay, all right. 1, 2, 3.
Praise
on
your standard, and sing to alma mater, immaculate heart, we greet you. Every loyal daughter, believe we belong to you, forever will we kneel for the glory of the blue and white. Hail our alma mater, hail.
Hey, yay, we did it. Okay, excellent.
Thank you all for doing this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Michelle.
Michelle, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I loved
So
it.
good to see everyone.
Everyone.
Is there some way we can write thank you notes to
Thanks, Michelle.
Desmond and to Ruth Ann? Because it would be fun for us to do it. Those of us who had them for teachers, I'd love to do that without, violating privacy or email. So maybe there's a way. Ruth Ann, I know you're still affiliated with the high school, but Kathy, you're off doing other things. But it would be fun.
Kathy's on Facebook. Kathy's on Facebook.
I will put I'm putting my email address right in the chat room.
Oh, great. That would be fun.
And so anybody who wants to say hi. The other thing I was going to put in the chat room is that if you go to Amazon and type in Anita Caspary, you can get both her book, which is her story, which is our story.
Beautiful.
And you can also get a copy of Time Magazine, of whatever it was that she was on the cover that sort of gave the wider picture of what was going on.
Great. Well, thank you. And we'll be doing more of these wonderful conversations. So just, we'll be posting as soon as we have something. And thank you again, you guys. Really, it's been a dream come true for me to do something like this. So really, I really thank you all for joining us.
Great job, Maggie.
Great job.
Michelle, thank you
Michelle.
so much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.